Well, hello and welcome to the video podcast of Seeing God in the Everyday. And I just want to let you know that we've had a great week of learning and experimenting and trying to get this whole thing together. And like I said, it's a learning curve, we said last week, of our new Seeing God in the Everyday and doing the podcast as well as the video podcast. And once again, we had a little glitch, but we're going to do a bonus Seeing God in the Everyday video podcast. But before we go any farther, I need to introduce my co-host, who is my beautiful bride, Becky. Hi, baby. How you doing?
Hey, I'm good. Hi, everybody.
So we had a little bit of glitch for some reason, and hopefully this will fix all of that. And we are looking forward to having a good video podcast. We just got done recording the audio podcast. And now we will do our video podcast, which I'm sure if you're watching one, not the other, you don't care. You really don't care that there's one, not the other. But
you should check out the other one.
For some of those folks who just can't get enough of that Seeing God in the Everyday material, we have the video podcast as well as the audio podcast. Wow, what a week this was back. My goodness. So we had this little thing that happened this past week, and I can't quite remember what it was.
Tropical Storm Ada.
Tropical Storm Ada kind of hit us here in Florida. No, it was unfortunately the presidential election.
Oh, it's not unfortunate. Just because it's still going.
Yeah, so
sort of. Depending on who you talk to.
Yeah, so we'll be like season 3 of Seeing God in the Everyday. The ending of the election. But no, we're not a political show. Again, we kind of we pay attention to political things because it's kind of smart to know what's kind of going on in the government.
Well, and we take seriously our responsibility as citizens.
Yeah, I mean, just so you know that I'm a veteran. My son's in the service. It's we're kind of patriotic people. We kind
of come from a long line of military members.
Both my father and your father, my brother, your brother. We kind of have a long history of serving the nation. So it's not that we're not patriotic or anything, but we kind of look at things just a little differently when it comes to the elections, when it comes to our government, and just how we're supposed to live our lives.
Right.
And we thought we'd kind of address this a little bit this week because of the election. And we want to stay up to date on what's going on in the world. It'd be kind of silly for us to say, hey, we see God in the everyday, but we're going to not even acknowledge the largest thing that happened last week. That'd be kind of rude. But we kind of wanted to talk a little bit about how we kind of see things a little bit differently, and it helps us. We believe it helps us to see God in the everyday in even this situation. Right. And I know you're paying attention to the election, but it's causing a lot of anxiety in folks. There's a lot of people that are angry. There's a lot of people that are upset. There's a lot of people, wringing their hands out and, we're gonna, whatever.
It has exposed a great, deep divide in our nation.
Yeah. And so one of the things that we wanted to share with you, our listeners and our viewers now, is this thing that we live our life by, and it's kingdom living. And when we look at the scriptures, God talks about his kingdom. Matter of fact, Jesus, when he his first words, his first teaching is about the kingdom. In John chapter 3, when he's talking to Nicodemus, he talks about entering the kingdom. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, you're good. When he teaches his disciples to pray, "Thy kingdom come." It's kind of a central theme.
Yeah. And so you see this whole thing where Jesus is teaching us about kingdom and about his kingdom. And he makes it very clear that his kingdom is not the same as our governmental system that we have living on this planet Earth, that it's not an earthly kingdom. And he says that over and over again.
Right.
And we see that. And you brought it up in the podcast so good when you were talking about the tax, where they were trying to trip him up on the whole taxes thing.
Right.
Do you want to share that again? Because I thought that was really good.
Okay, well, Jesus clearly describes that he was not coming to overtake any kind of earthly national kingdom. They thought they were going to trip him up. They brought him a gold coin and said, "What about the tax?" And I'm sure y'all know the story, right? Jesus looks at it and says, "Well, who's on the coin?" And they said, "Well, it's Caesar." And he said, "Well, rend to Caesar what's Caesar's." He wanted nothing to do with the tax, with the earthly governance. And seriously, think about that, y'all. We've talked about this before. If there was ever a time in history where the Son of God was going to come down on a national government, I mean, come on. Caesar claimed to be a god.
Right. Right.
The Son of God took issue with that, I'm thinking.
Yep.
But he was there to serve the kingdom of God. And it was a whole different thing.
Yeah. And that's where he was trying to talk to his followers so that they understood that whatever happens to you on this side, whatever happens to you on this earthly planet, it's the kingdom that you need to be concerned about. It's God's kingdom that you're a part of, that you're an heir of, that you're a citizen of, that you're striving, and it's also his kingdom that you should be living your life by. If you're a resident of a certain area, you live your life by that area. The phrase that everybody says, when in Rome, do as Rome. But we talk about as Christians that we live under a different standard, that we live under God's standard, God's rules, God's laws. And just because it's lawful doesn't mean it's always good for you. And that's living by the kingdom standards.
Right.
So we see this kind of play out as Jesus lived his life, talking about how we are living for the kingdom. Now, how does that translate? How does that filter into 2020, November 5th and 6th, as we're watching, all the news broadcasts of what's happening? And I think that we need to remember it's not the man in the office.
Right.
It's not even the office. Mm-hmm. It's that we're living under God's laws and that we're living to please him, and that we can see, even in the stressful moments, even in the hardest of times, that his will be done. Right. And that we can still see him moving. A lot of people say, well, the election is God's judgment, Well, you know what? Caesar was pretty strong against the first church.
Just a little bit.
They if you don't remember, you go back 2,000 years or so. They were taking Christians out and feeding them to the lions.
There were a few martyrs there.
Yeah, there was some bad things that the leader of the government was doing. But Christianity grew and expanded, And God used, I'm going to say it, that God used those moments, not that he wanted that to happen, but he used those moments so that the gospel kept moving forward, and that for the individual believer, they were able to live under his kingdom and his rule.
And they were able to live even in terrible external pressure. They were able to live with internal peace and love and victory and power in their lives. And I think there has been, in this whole division that's going on in our nation right now, there has been a tendency to think that just because there is division, because there is disagreement, that somehow our peace goes away. Somehow our foundations are shaky. And maybe the foundations of our nation are. In a nation that is split almost straight down the middle, yeah, that's a little shaky.
Right.
But if you hold citizenship, that word, citizenship, there it is, in the kingdom of heaven, that kingdom is founded on the character of a king who is completely in the open with who he is and what he does. He is always truthful. He is always working for our good. He is just. He is merciful. He is kind. He is consistent. The word says, I am the same yesterday, today, and forever. We don't have to worry about him flip-flopping.
No.
No,
he's not going to change his vote just because he got a nice spin on a yacht in New York Harbor.
So, it's that thing of, even though our national citizenship may be in a place that's got a little bit of turmoil going on, it doesn't change the solid foundation we stand on. We can walk in peace. We can walk in kindness towards people who don't see our national governance the same way we do.
Right.
It's fine. We can work with that.
Right.
Because that's human governance. Okay, there's that word again. Governance. It's human. And it's completely superseded by the king.
Right. Yeah, and we're not, sometimes you can get into the idea of, you're just being a wishy-washy Christian, and you're just being, whatever.
Isn't there a right and a wrong?
Isn't there a right and wrong?
Well, yes.
And there is a right and a wrong, and there is justice and injustice.
Right.
And we're going to come against both. We're going to actually, there's going to be times when justice will be served, and there's going to be times when justice will not be served. And it's okay to say, hey, we're going to use what the government has provided to go against that injustice. But when that's done, it shouldn't affect my standing in the kingdom or God's standing in the kingdom. And
it shouldn't affect my ability to walk in peace even in an unjust situation.
Right. Because you think about what was happening to those first generation Christians and the persecution they were going through. No, it was not just at all. But there was incredible peace that was given to them. There was, and Paul teaches about that, and this is the cool thing about Scripture, is because you get this full thing on this, because even when Paul gets arrested, he goes, wait a second, I'm a Roman citizen, so I
There
need
are
to be
certain
under a Roman
rights.
trial, and I have certain rights as a Roman citizen, which he did, and he used, and he was able to properly fulfill what he was supposed to be called to, because he went through trial and he was able to witness to people. It's a great story. Just read all about it. You know, but just because there's going to be injustice does not mean that God loses his ranking and who he is
Right.
in the kingdom. And it also shouldn't change who we are and how we see ourselves in the kingdom. You know, and remember, our job on this earth is the ministry of reconciliation.
Yeah.
You know, Jesus told us to preach the good news that there is a Savior who has died for them so that they can be reconciled to the King.
Right.
So everyone who's outside of the kingdom, our job is to do what we can do to make sure that they're reconciled to be in the kingdom.
But what if they're on the other side of the political aisle?
Then we try that much harder. You know, that's where, you know, we've got to be able to realize that it doesn't matter when we go and stand before the Lord. It's not going to matter. He's not going to ask, were you a Democrat? Were you a Republican? Were you a Green Party person? You know, did you vote for Ralph Nader? You know, why did you waste your vote back then? You know, stuff like that. You know, did you vote for Ross Perot? None of that's going to matter.
Did you obey me?
Did you obey me? Did you do what I asked you to do? And that was to bring people to me, the King.
Right.
And so
it's not our job, even if we perceive injustice being done, as citizens of the kingdom of heaven, under a king who has tasked us with citizen responsibilities. It's not our job to condemn them. It's our job to love and restore them to our King.
that is our job. You know, I've read the New Testament multiple times, and I don't see any of the apostles sitting down with the political leaders and sitting them down and saying, listen, you're doing this wrong. You're doing this wrong. You need to change. You got to change this government. You know, so we need to be careful at this time, both sides of the aisle, that we are focusing on the kingdom and that we are looking for what God is trying to teach us, what God is trying to show us, and what are we doing to reconcile those to the King, you know?
And I think, you know, we always go back to the example of Christ. He came into history at a time when literally he was, as a national subject, under a man who claimed to be God. Mm-hmm. This was the legitimate Son of God. He did not seek to overthrow that. In fact, his words were, I did not come into the world to condemn the world, but that through me, the world might be saved.
That's right.
That's the same ministry he passed on to us.
That's right.
Which means we're going to have to swallow our pride.
Yes. And, you know what? I'm not saying it's easy.
Nope.
It's, and I'm not even going to say it's going to be fun because, you know, I'm sure for those believers who live in China and in North Korea, it sucks. It's horrible that they live in a government that oppresses them, that at any time can come against them, destroy their church, take them out and take them to a gulag, or, you know, take them to a camp somewhere. And it's awful. And we know that eventually that's going to be the whole world, because we have read the last chapter and we know that that does happen at the end. But that's what we're called to do.
Right.
And you know what? I know we like to teach in church and stuff that, God's love, Jesus is love. If you just come, it's going to be great, yo. It's going to be awesome.
And he is love.
He is love. And
but
those
he's
things
love
are true.
As defined by himself.
Yep. And not defined by the world.
Yep.
And sometimes it's going to be difficult and it's going to be hard. And sometimes we're going to have to swallow our pride and realize that our goal is not to win the argument, but to reconcile souls to the King.
Yep.
So, well, thank you guys so much for hanging out with us this week, and we're hoping that we get all of our technical stuff. Maybe next week we'll have a different camera. This is kind of crazy with what's going on with the camera. I don't know if you're seeing that.
Bonus, because of this, because we're doing 2 recordings, there's different content here than there is on the audio.
That's right.
So, go listen to that.
That's right. So you can listen to both the podcasts and the video podcast. Is it a video podcast? What? I don't even know what it's called.
It's a vlog. I don't know.
I don't even know if it's a vlog. It's a video podcast. But you clearly have found us here on YouTube.
Congratulations.
On YouTube. Please let your friends know. Please tell people about this. If you're enjoying this, let other people know. They might enjoy it as well. Our goal is to encourage you to see God in your everyday.
Yes.
And that's what we're hopefully that's what we're doing. Also, you can listen to the podcast version of this show. It's actually... The podcast is a little bit different since we recorded that before we recorded this, but it's a little bit different. Actually, there's a few more things that we go in depth on, but that is on all of your podcasting software things. You can find it everywhere. Just type in Seeing God in the Everyday, and believe it or not, we usually pop up as the very first thing. Same thing on YouTube. Just type in Seeing God in the Everyday, and we pop up as the first thing. I know I promised more videos on our YouTube channel, and I'll be putting some of those up soon so that you can see some of our travels to Kenya and some of my travels down to Ecuador and stuff. And that's about it. Anything else you want to say, babe?
I don't think so.
All right. This was a fun time. We had a good time this week. It's been a stressful week. It's been a crazy, crazy week with different things that are happening in our home and obviously in the country. And it was good to spend this time with you. So God bless you guys. And we just hope that you guys get a little bit of this and can see God in your everyday. All right. Thank you guys so much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.